Hello everyone, welcome back. We're standing up again in preparation for these final cantos. This is the last discussion section of the Inferno. We are prepared for the great encounter with Lucifer, the brightest in the firmament, the greatest of the fallen angels, leader of the rebellion in heaven. If you've played video games, this is the final boss level. If you've read John Milton or even Fyodor Dostoevsky or Thomas Mann, you know that we can expect the most out of Satan. He's going to be the most dark, captivating, dangerous, and compelling of all the characters. After portraying so many devious, compelling, eloquent, dangerous characters throughout hell, how will Dante bring this epic story to a conclusion? What will be the culmination of all this evil? With Canto 31, Dante and Virgil reach the nadir, or the lowest point of hell, called Cocytus. It's the ninth circle, reserved for those who have practiced fraud upon people to whom they owe a special bond of trust. So this is the circle reserved for the traitors or the treacherous. As I've warned you, the bottom of hell is a lake of ice. It's actually formed by Lucifer's giant beating wings. And the only division between the sinners in the three rings in this lowest circle is the degree to which they are submerged in the ice. At the beginning, more of their bodies is exposed. At the end, they will be entirely under. If you're still interpreting the moral landscape as you should be, you'll notice here that this is Dante's portrayal of the utter lack and absence of human warmth and vitality. Those things which make us human, that blood that pumps through our veins here has frozen and come to a standstill. We are encountering the sins that have overtaken people and made them inhuman. The shades down here have sinned to such a degree that they have turned themselves almost into something less than human. Dante will portray them at first as kind of beasts. They are in fact freezing into almost something like objects. The last great encounter in the Inferno is two sinners whom Dante encounters locked in a gruesome duo in the ice. One is gnawing or chewing on the neck and head of the other. When he looks up to speak, he wipes his mouth on the hair of the head that he has been chewing. Ugh. These sinners, we will learn, are the Archbishop Ruggieri and the Count Ugolino della Gherardesca, two Guelph and Ghibelline enemies caught up in a series of betrayals and counter-betrayals involving power and politics and towers. All this is actually part of the historical record and happened when Dante was in his 20s, so he remembers the circumstances that led to this scene. The historical record does actually back him up here. Ugolino was eventually captured by Ruggieri and imprisoned in a tower like many of the towers that once overlooked the Florentine streets. He was imprisoned there with his sons and his grandsons. Dante transforms them all into his sons and to young children, perhaps to really give the scene an even more dramatic appeal. One day, after months locked in the tower, Ugolino hears them nailing the door closed below. And he realizes at that point that they are going to leave him and his children to starve to death. And this is where Dante once again takes the creative liberty to imagine what happens in that dark, closed, and secret room just before someone dies, as he did with Francesca, as he did with Pier della Vigna, and as he will do a number of times in the Purgatorio, imagining the last moments before death, the secret space that nobody could have possibly known about. The children plead with their father for an explanation, for comfort, but he is overwhelmed with fear and grief, and he says, "Without a word, I looked into the faces of my sons. I did not weep. Within, I turned to stone." The children die one by one, even at one point offering themselves to their father to eat, in reference to the Christian liturgy of the Eucharist, in which the priest repeats the words of Christ at the Last Supper, "Take, eat, this is my body." The last lines of Ugolino's grisly tale are, "Then hunger or fasting had more force than grief, was more powerful than grief." The implications here are perhaps even more terrifying because not explicit. What precisely does that line mean? We can't really tell. Does it mean that maybe hunger finally did what grief somehow couldn't do, that is, brought him to his death, or that hunger drove him past what his grief had stopped him from doing, that is, eating his own children, cannibalizing them in order to survive? Dante lets the question kind of vibrate in the darkness and recede with Ugolino as he returns to his bloody meal. But what's really frightening here, and captivating as well, is how we are drawn up into Ugolino's tale of what might or might not have happened to him at his death, so that we almost forget to recognize the awful damage and irrevocable destruction that he brought about. His betrayals and his feuding and his political struggles in Pisa led not only to damage and destruction around him, not only to his death, but to the death of his innocent sons and grandsons who were locked in the tower with him. The historical record differs slightly at this point because he was, in fact, involved in a political struggle with one of his sons. Be that as it may, Dante portrays them as the innocents in this situation, and some of Dante's final lines, after Ugolino stops speaking, are addressed to the city of Pisa, and the poet says, "There was no need to have his sons endure such torment." When we finally meet Satan in Canto 34, he is the most profound and startling letdown in all of literature. The letdown is so great that it's almost paradoxically fulfilling. He is the great betrayer himself, the leader of the rebellion in heaven, the betrayer of God's trust. And he is made as ugly as he was beautiful. He has giant, ugly bat wings. He has 3 multicolored faces. In each of the faces, he is chewing a sinner, and Dante tells us with awful, grisly detail that there is a bloody foam coming down his mouth. The 3 great traitors whom Satan chews are Brutus and Cassius, who betrayed the Roman Emperor Caesar, and of course Judas in the middle, who betrayed Christ. Dante's Satan, in fact, isn't a grand or eloquent creature at all. He's barely even a creature. He is more like a giant hunk of hairy flesh in the ice. Dante's portrayal forces us to grapple with the idea that evil itself is not a powerful force that opposes God. It's not, in fact, a force at all. It is the absence of human love and human reason. It is the absence of good that creates the sin that we've seen throughout the Inferno. All of the sinners whom we have met have used their reason and their language and their self-deceit to turn themselves into knots and to deceive us. But the evil that propels them, Dante suggests, following a medieval theological paradigm, is in fact an absence. It is the lack of good. Lucifer is like a giant blank spot, an empty point around which the vortex of the Inferno spins. He can't even own his own distinctive characteristics. Everything about Dante's Satan is a parody of the Christian Trinity. That is, he is entirely parasitic upon Christianity. His 3 faces are, of course, an inversion or perversion of the 3 persons of the Trinity. His bloody meal perverts the salvific meal of the Eucharist, and the wind from his wings that freezes hell perverts the wind or breath of the Holy Spirit, the Spirit that moves on the waters. What's Satan thinking? What's happening in there? It's inscrutable. And his inscrutability is in that way parallel to and very different from God's. We don't even think to ask almost what's inside of Lucifer's head, because what could possibly be in there? He can't even speak. God, on the other hand, in his mind holds all of creation. The mind of God, for Dante and for medieval theologians, was a metaphor for the repository of all knowledge and wisdom in the universe. The conclusion of the canto features Dante and Virgil actually climbing down the hairy flank of Lucifer. And at one point, they have to turn themselves around as they cross the midpoint of the world. So gravity changes at the midpoint. Dante doesn't realize what's happening. He's afraid they're going back into the Inferno. Virgil reminds him, no, in fact, we are now climbing out. The final words of the canticle of the Inferno are significant, and the final word itself is repeated at the end of each of the following canticles of, well, Purgatorio and Paradiso. E quindi uscimo a riveder le stelle. And from there we emerged to see once more the stars, le stelle. It's important to note here that those stars were there all the time. They had just become invisible in the depths to which Dante and Virgil had descended. In the last image, Dante offers us one final metaphor, which is that sin takes away or clouds our vision of those night stars, of the divine guidance that is always there if we are willing to look up and find it on the other side of our error and sin.